I first saw the Halden baby the morning before the screens went dark. She lay in a warming cot, swaddled to the neck, blinking at the fluorescent ceiling with the calm opacity of someone who didn't yet know how much her body had betrayed her father. The nurse pulled back the blanket so I, as senior neonatologist, could perform the routine transparency assessment. Something I had done thousands of times, yet still approached with the awe reserved for minor miracles. Newborns come into the world as soft glass sculptures. Their bones glisten like ice inside an envelope of glimmering skin, and their organs float pale and pearlescent. Truth, the midwives say, is their natural element. It gives shape without weight. But as time presses on and words accumulate, that purity modulates. With every lie uttered near them or about them, a clot of color blooms. The hemispheres of a brain shade first, then lungs swirl like smoke-filled bellows. Each falsehood leaves a residue, a thin graphite smear that can, if left unchallenged, deepen into a consuming black. The Halden baby Amelia Grace was only 41 hours old. By custom, nothing black should have appeared in her for weeks. She ought to have been all bell transparency, with some early opalescent flecks. The ordinary doubts of parenthood, the whispered worry that she would sleep through the night, the harmless deception in a mother's promise that vaccination needles don't hurt. Yet as the nurse unclasped the infant's wrap, I swallowed a gasp. Her liver was already tarduck. The outline of her stomach looked like a lump of volcanic glass. Most troubling, a tilt of her head revealed a sable shadow across the corpus callosum, as though an eclipse had slid between the hemispheres of her brain. There is protocol for this. We document pigment sites, enter photographs into the National Registry, counsel families, recommend interventions, usually truth-telling sessions by which parents can lighten the clouds. I looked up at the mother, Elise Halden, who sat rigid in the visitor's chair, wedding ring twisting anxiously. I knew her only from the tabloids, the philanthropist spouse of Marcus Halden, the man slotted to announce his bid for prime minister in 12 days. His face stared from every billboard. Arctic eyes, perfect haircut, index finger, mid-gesture, as if punctuating an eternal promise. "Would you like me to call your husband?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "He's on the road in Westholme." Rally speech. Her voice was polite, bureaucratic. People forget that etiquette itself is a mild form of lying, and I heard the faintest crackle of static across the monitor as she spoke. A sign the baby registered the untruth of omission. The nurse raised an eyebrow. Elise Halden bit her lip. "All right," she conceded. "He told me not to say where he is. He thinks press will swarm." A darker filament unfurled along the infant's aorta. I dictated measurements to the resident beside me, then wheeled the cot back into the NICU. We slid the incubator door shut. The baby's lungs pulsed a dusky charcoal now. Machines hummed. She closed her fists, protesting with the squeak of an unoiled hinge, a cry less like a wail than a rusted gate. The hospital PR chief warned us to expect press intrusions, but we underestimated the speed. By mid-afternoon, a drone hovered outside the 11th floor window, its camera lens pressed to the glass. An orderly yanked the blinds. At ground level, supporters and detractors fused into a singular shout. They came with placards. "Halden equals hope. Halden equals hoax yet." All eyes turned upward, waiting for the verdict within the newborn body. She, not he, was now the oracle of truth. 17 hours later, the national network leaked the first photo, a grainy shot of a babe whose intestines had already gone nightshade. By then I had convened the chromatic ethics board. They sat in a semicircle outside the ward, passing a single flashlight over printed stills. Dr. Chin traced the border of the pancreas with a grim finger. "At this rate," she said, "the child will be fully opaque within a week." "That's physiologically impossible," murmured Dr. Ortiz. "Only if the lies stop coming," Chin replied, "and they won't, not with a campaign underway." I was appointed liaison to the family. Elise received me in the private suite the government had purchased. Orchids, gold leaf fixtures, bulletproof windows. She was smaller in person, hair undone. The persona of philanthropic poster woman scraped away to reveal a mother who couldn't remember where she'd placed her phone. Marcus Halden arrived late, the aftertaste of applause still on his suit. He gave me a handshake designed to be photographed, firm, paternal, eyes engaged exactly 1.5 seconds. I gestured toward the baby's most recent translucence scan. He angled the printout away from Elise. "You're sure there's no medical error?" he asked. "I'm sure." "Then your instrument's miscalibrated." "These readings don't lie, Mr. Holden. People do. And when they do, their children show it." He opened his mouth perhaps to dispute the premise, but the wall monitor beeped. The baby's duodenum clouded half a shade darker before our eyes. Marcus closed his mouth. The shade receded infinitesimally. That, too, was data. The next morning, the primetime host Mara Vesnick opened her show by replaying every campaign pledge Marcus had made the past year, cut with imagery of his baby's darkening silhouette. Polling nosedived. Opposition senators proposed the Candor hearings, a televised forum where each candidate would submit to real-time spectroanalysis beside their infants or closest living descendant. Now, if our laws can subpoena bank statements, Senator Iranian argued, why not the one record that cannot be forged? I remembered childhood lessons. Long ago, a queen had envied the glass-born prophets and ordered tapestries draped over every nursery. Outrage toppled her reign. Glass babies, we teach medical students, are soft but unbreakable. Ignoring them shatters the world before it cracks them. By the third evening, the Holden baby's kidneys were pitched. The rest of her abdomen glittered just enough to show how fast the void spread. I recommended the standard therapy, restorative truth. Parents sit bedside and speak aloud every deception they have uttered within the infant's earshot, intentional or not. Nature hears confession, lifts the stain. It may take hours, sometimes days, but the science is impeccable. Marcus balked. "You can't expect me to recite private matters while reporters camp outside. The baby doesn't care about your privacy." Elise surprised us both. "I'll start," she said. She took the small, stiff hand and began like someone praying rosary. "I lied when I said Daddy was just busy. He was with his consultant discussing how to bury a misappropriation report." A gust of black receded from the baby's spleen. Elise continued with a trembling steadiness. White lies, petty deceptions, deeper betrayals, some that made Marcus flinch. Each yielded a wash of clarity as though soap passed across glass. After an hour, Amelia's lungs blushed gray instead of soot. A violet returned to her intestines. Marcus stood at the foot of the cot, jaw dying fish-like, as if arid without words. When Elise paused, he opened his mouth. His first confession, perhaps. A photographer's flash lit the window. Marcus snapped shut, fled the ward, and that night delivered a debate performance so flushed with rhetoric that analysts declared it an unprecedented torrent. I watched from the staff lounge while retrieving coffee. One sentence in, Amelia's heart flashed black on the distant monitor. By the time he finished, nothing in her chest was visible. She coded at 2:14, revived at 2:16, every alarm screaming the price of oratory. News of the near death traveled faster than pulse. By dawn, candles filled the hospital courtyard, not just protesters now. Grandparents with clear-bodied toddlers, school children pointing at their own faint speckles of adolescent experimenting. They held signs, "Truth heals." Others held darker ones, "Dark baby," "Dark leader." Nobody noticed the difference between justice and cruelty. The mob lens equalizes. I convened the board again. "If we don't intervene," I said, "the baby will die and the public will mount her corpse like a standard." "What intervention remains?" Dr. Ortiz asked. "Give her voice." The room stirred. I clarified. "Set up a live feed, real-time imaging. Let the nation watch as words spoken by any person in her presence color or cleanse. Invite Marcus. Invite senators, donors, journalists. No spin. The body is the barometer." I'll tell you right now, the body is the barometer. It was radical and ethically fraught. It was also the only plan no one could accuse of partiality. After 48 hours of debate, they agreed. The hospital partnered with the Bureau of Public Integrity. Engineers arrayed hemispheric cameras around the incubator. Every pixel of Amelia's translucence calibrated against a spectrograph that glowed green for lightning, red for darkening. A banner crawled across national broadcast. You are watching the Halden Transparency Trial. On day one of the feed, viewership eclipsed the championship finals. People betted on which organ would cloud next, yet something else happened. In living rooms across the country, parents turned to their own babies. They heard themselves promise dessert after dinner, then remembered none remained. They watched a shadow flicker across their child's spleen. Supermarkets ran out of chocolate. Promises were kept. One anchor remarked, "We are all living under glass now." Marcus arrived on day 3. The cameras caught his swallow as he entered the circle of light. Amelia lay as delicate and dark as a moonless pond. He asked that the microphones cut a moment. We refused. The feed remained unbroken, the green-red ribbon a lie detector no button could mute. He took the baby's hand, much the way Elise had. He pressed forehead to the incubator wall. He began with the small. "I lied about liking your mother's pumpkin soup." Nothing moved. Small, benign lies rarely mark. He dug deeper. "I lied about reading every voter letter." Amelia's pancreatic border shivered lighter by half a degree. The nation exhaled. Then came the dam break. He confessed bribery to expedite zoning approvals, ghost-written op-eds, hush money for a discarded affair. Amelia's brain lobes brightened like sunrise through smoke. The words, stylized for years to evade law, now prized plainness over elegance. A million households sat in hush. Senators texted aides. "How black is my record?" Another lie surfaced even as he spoke truth. He implicated rivals while shielding benefactors. The spectrograph reddened. Amelia's duodenum streaked anew. The whole country saw the consequence in milliseconds. Marcus, sweating, corrected himself, named the omitted financiers, surrendered account numbers, laughed grimly at his own transparency. The red retreated. Within 2 hours, Amelia's liver glowed pale rose. She fell asleep, the first untroubled rest of her life. That night, the opposition demanded equal airtime. The feed accepted. One by one, officials stood before the incubator. Each statement rolled across the ribbon. Green, if honest. Red, if not. Shiny kidneys. Carmine gallbladders. The baby became a mirror none could escape. Some politicians cracked after 2 sentences. Others lasted 5, but eventually every spin collapsed into confession. A studio analyst observed that the body never moralizes, it only measures. By dawn, resignation letters stacked like autumn leaves. Parliament scheduled emergency elections. The regulatory board wrote guidelines limiting infant-based truth ceremonies to crisis use only, but for the moment, the Halden Transparency Trial, as reporters branded it, remained the carpenter's level held against the walls of power. I kept vigil beside the baby, monitoring for aftershocks. She giggled, an unexpected sound from someone who had hung between life and death 4 days earlier. Giggling has no color value, it is for now pure. When Marcus and Elise visited together, something curious occurred. Their combined words rarely needed calibrating. It seemed they practiced before arrival, rehearsed until honesty rang unforced. Honesty can, like any muscle, be trained. A week later, Amelia's body shone almost as it should have at birth. There were subtleties, faint gray quilts in her kidneys, a charcoal bead above the hippocampus, reminders that time doesn't rewind. But she was well enough to go home. The discharged nurse printed a new transparency report. Risk level low, recommended monthly spectrographs, parental candor mandatory. Marcus signed the forms. No entourage waited, only a single sedan. Flashbulbs popped, but not as many as earlier. The public had moved on to introspection. Pollsters found voters more likely to admit confusion about policy details. Spouses practiced rephrasing compliments they didn't mean. Social networks added a feature where a post could flicker translucent if later fact-checked inaccurate by its author. "Truth," one columnist wrote, "has become contagious." Before the Haldens left, Marcus pulled me aside. "Do you think she'll forget?" he asked, eyes on his child, not me. "Babies don't remember in words," I answered. "But their cells remember contours, like a tree keeps rings of drought. She'll grow around the darkness you built, and if you keep lying, New rings will form, he nodded. What if I dedicate my career to preventing this from happening again? No secrets, full disclosure, independent oversight. Then her rings may strengthen instead of scar. He exhaled as if that were permission. Perhaps it was. Months passed. Candor hearings replaced televised debates. Candidates stood beside transparent offspring or, lacking those, transparent nieces, nephews, grandchildren. Some voters worried about exploitation, others praised evolutionary justice. Still, misuse threatened. Black market infants rumored to be rented by officials with no clear heirs. The ethics board remained vigilant. We instituted protocols. Infants must share at least one grandparent with the candidate. All ceremonies supervised by pediatricians. No sessions longer than an hour to protect the child's nervous system. Glass may be resilient, but even glass fractures under too much heat. My life returned to quieter rituals, measuring how stories lighten bodies, how bodies sharpen stories. Yet sometimes, during night rounds, I recall the moment Marcus Halden finally told the deepest truth. He feared his child more than any electorate. That fear, inverted, became courage. And I consider how the nation, gazing through that baby window, spied the same terror in itself. One evening in late autumn, a postcard arrived at the unit. Front, a finger-painted heart, radiant pink. Back, Dr. Kaz, my organs are cherry, lilac, gold. Daddy says that means he's being good. Love, Amelia. The scrawl belonged to Elise, yet I sensed the child in the colored ink. A postscript in Marcus's recognizable slant read, "Still learning, still transparent." No signature needed. I pinned the card to the staff corkboard. Around it clustered articles, new transparency legislation, a study linking early lightening to decreased adult anxiety, an expose on lobbyists whose secrets now cost them TV gigabytes of baby gloom. Medicine rarely witnesses immediate social shift. Usually we save one patient at a time and the world trudges unchanged. But occasionally a single body serves as both patient and proof. The Halden baby reminded us how close the viscera lie to the vote, how quickly the personal becomes national, how the first breath of a newborn can upend the last breath of a lie. When students rotate into my seminar, I hold up Amelia's initial scan beside her greenlit discharge image. I ask, what cured her? They answer, truth. I correct them. Truth alone isn't medicine. Speech is. The willingness to put sound to fact, no matter its ugliness, and to bear the color it spreads. Truth withheld poisons, truth uttered heals. Some shake their heads. Others scribble notes. One or two gaze at their own half-faded childhood marks beneath the collarbone. Yet all listen. Their ears, like newborn organs, require clear pathways. For as long as humans speak, their children will testify, not through words, but through the tint of every heartbeat. Outside my office window stands the pediatric ward's stained glass installation depicting a mother lifting a translucent child against the sky. The artist left one pane blank, clear as air. Sunlight passes through and falls on the corridor floor, making silhouettes of everyone who crosses. Whenever I step into that rectangle, I glimpse the bones of my own feet, white, fragile, exact, and remember the oath we doctors share with parents and politicians alike. First, be transparent.